Recently there was a blog post on code.blender.org about some of the upcoming changes for motion tracking and masking in Blender. So there's lots of good stuff that is being worked on, or at least that is planned, but the main change has already been made, and that is to migrate the clip editor to use the new tool system. Though it's actually not so new anymore. So it has been nearly 4 years that the clip editor was the only editor in Blender to use the old system. But last year, with the help of Sergey from the Blender Studio and Aaron Carlisle, I managed to migrate the clip editor to use the active tool system. And it's still a work in progress, but if you want to check it out, you can test it by using the tracking tools branch. Though I think it should be merged to master pretty soon. So I thought I can give you an overview about some of the upcoming changes and how to use it to track a simple shot. Okay, so first of all, let me adjust the UI for you so that you can see something. And then let's go to the VFX layout and then to motion tracking. So this should look still familiar. So we still have the 3D viewport in the upper right corner. We have the dope sheet of the clip editor and of course the clip editor itself. Some of the things do look a little bit different though, like the tool area. But let's first open up a shot. So you still have the open footage button here. And then you go to the folder with your footage and open it. Okay, so now it's obvious that there are some things that have changed indeed. So for example, the clip panel, or in fact all panels that have been here are now gone, because this has been replaced with a tool system that we have in the 3D viewport as well. So the clip panel has been moved to the footage tab here in the sidebar. So if you want to prefetch the frames and load them into the system memory, you can press the button here. Or you use the menu to prefetch the frames, or you just simply press P. Okay, so now that the frames have been loaded into the memory, we can start tracking. And to do that, we use the add marker and tweak tool, which is active by default. So add marker and tweak means exactly that. So you can press here, and if you keep the mouse button pressed, you will tweak the marker. You don't have to hold the control key or any modifier key for it. You will always add a marker if you click somewhere. If you hover over a marker in the center, then within a certain threshold it will select the marker, so you can indeed tweak it. And if you click outside the marker, it will within a certain threshold create a new marker. So now we could start adding a bunch of markers in our scene, but maybe we want to change the settings. Now the new tool system uses the tool settings in the header like everywhere else now in Blender. So if you want to use an affine marker, you can simply change it here, or you can also increase the pattern area. So if I now create a marker here, it will use these settings that I have up here. Or you can use a preset, like blurry footage, or create your own preset. Now, if you don't want to see this, you can hide it by using this button here, Tool Settings, and now all these settings are now gone. Now, what do you do? Where are they? Well, it's using the tool system in Blender, so you can find them here. You have the same principle in the 3D viewport. All these settings that you have in the tool system are also in the tool panel in the sidebar. But I would recommend to show the tool settings so you can use them here. Okay, now let's add a bunch of markers. Maybe use the default but affine. So we can add those and just fill the entire scene with markers. Maybe also some on the floor. And clickety click, and then select them and start tracking them by using either this button here or using the menu, or I like to use the pie menu, so you could press E and then use track markers, and if you want to make it really quick, you just press E and swipe to the right, which will now track forward. Now, if I expand the graph view here, you can see that some might be a little bit problematic. I'm not sure. So what you can do is you can use the filter tool. Now, the filter tracks tool had previously been in the tool system somewhere here in the reconstruction panel, or the reconstruction tab, whatever. You have that now here in the sidebar. So if you go to reconstruction, you still have the clean up filter tracks. So you can click that, or you can also use the context menu. So for those people that use the left mouse button to select, you can press your right mouse button to bring up the context menu, or for people like me who use right mouse button to select, you can bring up the context menu with W, and there you have the filter tracks option as well. So this did select, I think, these two markers. So if I press X and delete them, those problematic tracks are now gone. Well, so I think this is the basics of the tool system. Just for completeness, if you want to select markers a lot, you can use the box select tool, or you just press B as before, which also works. Or if you want to add some drawings, there's the annotation tool. But let's get rid of that here. Go back to track. So that's the tool system. But some other things have changed as well. For instance, the position of the solve button. So we have that here now. By the way, it's very similar to the text editor. So if you have a Python script, you can run it from this button here as well. And we used that concept and applied it to the clip editor. So if you press the button, you can solve the shot. Or, of course, you can go to reconstruction and solve the camera motion from here as well. The solve error is 0.97, which is already quite good. But if you want to improve it still, you can refine it and also track or solve the focal length. So you could go to the solve options and use this focal length and radial lens distortion. So if we solve that now, we are at 0.23, which is really quite good. But part of the reason for that is also that we only have tracked in the center of the frame. So to get maybe more accurate solution of the lens distortion, we might want to track some features up here. By the way, locking is enabled. So if I have a marker, this will be centered here. I can enable or disable that with this lock icon, or just by pressing L. And the thing that changed to the previous versions of Blender is that now if I enable or disable locking, it will not move everything to the center. So if I press L, it will just stay locked to this area and can still move it around freely. Now let's add some markers on the outside of the frame to get a more decent representation of the lens distortion. Okay, so which of these and this, and maybe let's track this again. So press E and just solve again. 0.33. Maybe this one is a little bit problematic here, so I cut that off and solve again, and this should be now fine. If I want to view the lens distortion or the undistorted footage, I can do that by going to clip display and enable render undistorted. But I think for tracking itself, it doesn't really make sense to have the button enabled. And by the way, if you didn't calculate the proxies, Blender will calculate the undistorted frames on the fly, so it might be a little bit slower than before. And again, I think it doesn't really make that much sense to view the undistorted footage while you are tracking. So let's just keep it disabled. We can also have a look at the lens settings by going to camera, and you can see here the undistortion values. So yeah, so that's that. So solve error is good, and we can now proceed by reconstructing the scene in the 3D viewport. And we can do so by going to the reconstruction menu and set up a tracking scene, or we go to reconstruction menu and press the setup tracking scene here. Now, one thing you can see right away that is that the orientation is off. So for now, we use the old way, which is to select 3 points on the ground and set them as the floor. Then use one that can be the origin and one that can be the either X or Y axis. So now I think we have a pretty decent orientation of the scene. And we can render that now if we want to. Before that, however, we would have to change the render engine to cycles, maybe set the film to be transparent and all that stuff. And I think these should change in the future. So this entire setup with a view layer, foreground and background, and these collections are a little bit outdated. So this should change at some point. If you go from tracking to mask, you have some new tools here as well. For instance, draw a mask. So you just have to click and drag, and thereby creating a mask. If you change the setting here to vector, for instance, then every new point will be a vector mask point. Then you still have to Alt-C to close a mask. This should change in the future. You have the slide mask or add a feather vertex tool currently. So if you hold down the control key, you can create the feather spline or change that. But these two, I suppose, will change in the future. Also, hopefully there will be new options to these tools, like a transform cage, for instance, or a new tool to add a circle or a square mask or stuff like that. So this is still work in progress. There's going to be some changes. The interface of the mask editor is pretty much similar to as it was before. You have here the mask tab with the mask layers. The mask display settings have been moved out of this up here, so you can add smooth shading or control that. Also, there's going to be some changes here. By the way, you have the objects panel. So if you want to, for example, if you are tracking something and want to have an object track, you can create a new object here and then switch between object and camera. So we have that here in masking as well. So there's that. Yeah, that's it so far. I don't want to drag this out too long. So this is everything is still work in progress. Stuff is going to happen still, but at least you get an idea of the direction in which it is going. So thanks for watching and goodbye.